I'm rambling. I am absolutely rambling. Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I'm Amy. Today I have some historical fiction recommendations for you all. I adore historical fiction. It's always been one of my favorite genres, and with it being fall, I find that I gravitate towards them a little bit more. They're just very cozy reads. So I have a variety of books from middle grade to adult. I don't know if I have any YA, maybe some YA in here, and they're from a huge range of time periods and places and countries. So if you're looking for some historical fiction recommendations, then go ahead and keep on watching. Let's go ahead and get started with my adult fiction for you all. My first recommendation is Homegoing by Ya Jessie. The reason I picked this book is because such a huge amount of time lapses throughout this whole story. So for those of you who may not know, this book, each chapter follows one of two half-sisters' descendants from the 1700s up until present day. And one of these half-sisters ends up being sold into slavery, and her descendants are growing up and living in America, and the other is in Ghana, and it's about their story. And this book is really, really good. If you're looking for a more comprehensive history of Black individuals, I really do recommend this because it just, so much time lapses, but you really get a nice snapshot of what that time period was like in that area. The second book I have for you is very similar to A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, so if you like this book, I definitely recommend this one, and that is Someone by Alice McDermott. This book follows a young woman from the teen years until she's an adult, and even some flash forward into the more present day, I would say, and it's just about her growing up in Brooklyn and dealing with the war, and her brother who was going to be a priest but didn't last a year in his first parish, and she works in a funeral home, and it's a lovely slow burn of a story that's just about love and family and being who you are, and I highly, highly recommend this one. This one has been a 5 out of 5 read for me this year, which I haven't had many of. This third one is a little bit of a cheat because technically I haven't finished yet. I've only read half of it, but I know enough about it. I feel strong enough that I can recommend it to you all, and that is Paris, the novel by Edward Rutherford. This book essentially tells the history of Paris through families throughout history in these little fictionalized segments. It is not done in chronological order, which can be a bit confusing, but there is a family tree in the very front of this book that helps you follow that. But this is a very in-depth representation of the history of Paris, and it truly is beautiful. Rutherford's writing is really good. It can be dense at times, but he has some really interesting storylines, and you will follow a variety of people, nobles to scholars to a young man who helped build the Eiffel Tower. It's just a really, really interesting read that you get so much history out of, and very weird kind of random facts that I don't think I otherwise would have gotten. So this is a great one if you're interested in Paris throughout history. This fourth one is a classic. I'm sure many of you have read it, but if you haven't read it, you absolutely should, and that is The Help by Catherine Stockett. And this is about Black maids in the South in the 1960s, and also a young woman named Skeeter who wants to write a book about them because she's in journalism. And there is a movie with it, a movie of this. I have only seen snippets of it on YouTube. I haven't watched the whole thing, but this book is heartbreaking. It's beautiful. It'll make you laugh. It'll make you cry. It's important, and it just looks at a very interesting time period in America, in the South, during civil rights movements, and it's really good. I highly recommend it. If you haven't read it, you really should. And now we're gonna go across the sea and back a few hundred years to Philippa Gregory's books. This is The Other Boleyn Girl, which is about Mary Boleyn, Anne Boleyn's sister, who was a mistress to King Henry VIII before Anne was married to him. And I enjoyed this book. This book is very good. I've read a variety of or several of Philippa Gregory's books. I believe my favorite, I don't own it anymore, I think I unhauled it, which is silly of me because I want it now again, was The Boleyn Inheritance, which follows 3 of King Henry's wives, I believe. And she just creates these characters, or takes these characters that are so well known and just makes them very human, and I really enjoy these books. If you are at all interested in King Henry VIII, I'm obsessed with him. I think he's like crazy interesting to learn about. I highly recommend her books. She just creates such an atmosphere that you can just so easily get lost in, because her books can be rather large, but I don't find them hard to read or confusing because she just really makes this world come to life. And the last of my recommendations for my adult novels I've talked about before, so I'm just briefly going to touch on it, and that is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. This is a World War II story about two sisters in France, and that's all I'm going to say because there's plenty of other videos where I've chatted about this book, but it is beautiful. It'll break your heart. It will break your heart. It is heartbreaking, this book. So many tears were shed while I read this book, but so amazingly good. And the characters in this book are just so vivid and real that I cannot recommend this book enough. Now on to my YA middle grade picture books, and the first two that I have here are American Girl books. And for those of you who may not know, American Girl is a company that sells dolls, that they have dolls from certain periods in America's history, and you can purchase them and clothes and all kinds of things and the books. And I was a huge American Girl fan when I was young. Felicity and Kit are currently up in my attic, and I'm sure will come down someday when I have children of my own. But these are the Felicity books. Felicity is from 1774, so when the Revolution started here in the United States. And there are generally 6 books in each collection of each doll. So the first one is always Meet Felicity or whoever. Felicity learns a lesson, Felicity surprise, Happy Birthday Felicity, Felicity saves the day, and Changes for Felicity. And I devoured these books time and time again. These are great for young readers. I will show you the Kit book, which follows Kittredge, who is living during the Great Depression. So definitely bigger font. There's illustrations throughout the book, and they're just great stories that are so rooted in what actually happened, and I think they're very accessible to children. And so I so recommend these, and also the dolls, because I just love them. They're just a huge part of my childhood. So definitely recommend. And then the next stack of books they're very similar, but there's 2 different ones. There's the Dear America books, which are books that are done, I believe, by a variety of authors. And these were all done by Scholastic, but there are tons of them from different points in America's history. So this one is The Winter of Red Snow, The Revolutionary War Diary of Abigail Jane Stewart, so Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, 1777. And then this one is So Far From Home, The Diary of Mary Driscoll, an Irish mill girl in Lowell, Massachusetts in 1847. And like I said, I read so many of these when I was young. It is obviously in diary form, so you're just hearing these girls' recollections of these huge moments in history, and I adored these so very, very much. And especially if you have a young one or you are interested in American history, these are a great place to start. And the other books that are very similar to those are the Royal Diaries books. And again, these are from a variety of authors. It's the exact same setup. It's these girls' diaries and recollections of their lives and different points of history from all over the world. And so this first one is Eleanor, the Crown Jewel of Aquitaine in France, 1136. And this one is Catherine, the Great Journey from Russia, 1743. And the last one I have here is Jahanara. That was terrible, I apologize. Princess of Princesses, India, 1627. And so these books, again, just highlight these different points in history, and there's so many of them, and I adore them. Some of them have these beautiful gilded edges. Again, I can't recommend these enough, especially for young kids. If you want to instill an appreciation of history, start with these books. They're just great. And the last 3 books that I have for you are picture books, and one's a little bit of a cheat, but I'll explain that to you when I get there. The first one that I have here is Birdie's Lighthouse, which is this really cool sized book, and this was written by Deborah Hopkinson, illustrated by Kimberly Bulkin Root. And this is about a girl named Birdie who her father runs the local lighthouse, and I believe the whole point, and this is kind of like a diary, so she's filling out the lighthouse keeper's journal diary type thing, that her father gets sick, and so she has to be the one to take care of the lighthouse and make sure that no one gets hurt. And it is a great book. I adore it. I read this book so many times as a kid, and I believe, yes, this is a signed edition that my sister and I got in 2000. So such a wonderful book, and again, the fun size is really cool. And this next one is my cheat one a little bit, because technically it's not historical fiction, but it is historical, and that is Pioneer Girl, the story of Laura Ingalls Wilder by William Anderson and illustrated by Dan Andreasen. And I'm sure many of you have read the Little House on the Prairie books, so this is about Laura Ingalls Wilder, who wrote those books. And fun fact, Laura Ingalls Wilder is actually in my family tree, so I've always been fascinated by those stories, and my parents, specifically my mom, read them to me, especially when we were camping and when we were young, so I have very fond memories of this. And this book has a lot of words in it, but this is essentially Laura Ingalls Wilder's life, and it's a really pretty book, again, if you have a little one who likes history, especially America in the pioneer days. Recommend this one. And then the last one is The Story of Ruby Bridges by Robert Coles, illustrated by Georgia Ford, and this is based on a true story, again, so technically not fiction. And this is about a little girl named Ruby, who was the first girl who was picked to go to be integrated into a white school. And what ended up happening is these parents ended up boycotting the school, so that Ruby was literally the only student in class. And like I said, it's a cheat too. And so this is just a book about Ruby and what happened to her and how things got affected and all that jazz. And it's a really wonderful story, a great read for kids, and a great way to talk to them about race and discrimination and all of that. There you have it, guys. I'm a little bit out of breath, but there are some recommendations for you. Let me know if any of these books sound interesting to you, or if you've read any of these, what your thoughts were on them, or if you happen to read the Royal Diaries or the Princess or the Dear America books like I did, or were an American Girl fan. Please let me know. Let's talk about it. So many warm fuzzies when I think about that. And again, if you guys have any historical fiction recommendations for me, please let me know. Like I always say, I'm always looking to increase my TBR. But if you guys liked this video, please like it. And if you loved it, please subscribe, and we'll see you in my next video. Happy reading. We did it! We did it! We did it! Hooray! Shout out to any of you who knows what that's from. Nah.